Welcome to the segment on the legal support to incorporating viral health and safety skills into the IEP. I'm Julie Swanson, I'm the Life Skills Lady, and I'm joined by special education attorney Jennifer Laviano, who just happens to be my partner on some projects. Jen, tell everybody some of our projects that we have together.
We have a number of them, Julie, over the years, as you know, but probably our three biggest would be our website, which is yourspecialeducationrights.com. That's a video-based website to help parents and educators understand the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And so that's basically the special ed laws. We also have a book called Your Special Education Rights: What Your School District Isn't Telling You. That's also designed primarily for parents, but we hope educators can get a lot out of it as well. And then we have a new podcast called The Special Ed Files, which you can find on iTunes, and we're very excited about that as well.
Oh, excellent. Well, I know that was a little bit of a commercial for us, but we want you, I want you to understand some of the other projects that I'm also involved in. And, but anyway, here we are at the Life Skills Lady, talking about the supporting, the legal supports for why viral health and safety skills can be included in your child's IEP. So the very first thing, Jen, that I'd like you to talk about is where's the starting point?
Okay, so the IDEA, which is again the federal special education law, it starts by having purposes, and it's defined, and I know you have it on your handout that you have available on your site, what the whole purpose of special education is, and that includes making sure that students have free and appropriate public education. And one of the things that is important as part of education is more than just academics, but also functional skills.
So thank you for bringing that up. I want everybody to know that on my website, I was going to talk about your specialeducationrights.com. Sorry. All right, let me think. Lifeskillslady.com. I have a printable PDF that is, we're going to go over it with you today so that you understand all of the reasons why the IDEA supports your request to incorporate viral health and safety skills. And so I'm going to read the first stated purpose of the IDEA that Jen just talked about. And it says it is to ensure that all students with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living.
Right.
So the reason why I have that as the number one supporting documentation in the IDEA for viral health and safety skills is our functional skills and how we are going to function as adults is in the very first stated purpose of the IDEA. So let's go on to present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, which is the next thing on the form. I'm going to read, I'm actually going to paraphrase, okay? And then Jen is going to talk more about what present levels of academic achievement and functional performance are. So it is a statement that includes how the child's disability affects the child's involvement and progress in the general education curriculum, and how it meets each of the child's other educational needs that result from the child's disability, and for preschool children, how the disability affects the child's participation in appropriate activities. So Jen, can you talk about the importance of present levels of academic achievement and functional performance?
Sure. So the reason that the IDEA requires that a description of the students' present levels, as we shorthand them in this field, is in the IEP is because the individualized education program is a plan. It's at its core, it's a contract that's developed between parents and the school district of the plan that everyone agrees should be in place for one calendar year. And so that's why we call them annual reviews, okay? And so the plan is that in a year, this child will have the following skills, and we're going to work on it in the following ways. And how do you start a plan without knowing where you're starting? And so the whole point is to make sure that we have a description in the IEP of what the child's functional performance is, as well as their academic achievement.
Right. And so for the purposes of this segment, we're really focusing on functional performance. That's
Right.
not to say that academic achievement is not important. Of course it is. But I find in the work that I do with so many parents who have children who have autism spectrum disorders is that the functional skills of the child are not always, or all too often, I should say, not represented accurately. That they may have lots of lagging functional skills that have never been assessed and never make their way on to the IEP. So in my opinion, there's never been a more important set of skills, right? Functional skills that our students who have autism spectrum disorder should have. And those are our viral health and safety skills, whether it's mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing, and a host of other viral health and safety skills. So the rationale that your child or a student has to have these skills has never been more important, because our safety and health is at the center of this conversation.
Well, and Julie,
Now, yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
for
please.
many students, it's not just a matter of the safety and the health, which of course is paramount to anybody and any parent, any family, but for many students, they will not be permitted to attend school if they cannot follow the safety rules and the health rules. Now,
Right.
in some states, there will be medical exceptions. There's
Right.
obviously a tremendous amount of anxiety around this issue for students who, for sensory and other reasons, can't tolerate a mask. And I'm not by no means professing that it's an easy issue. However, if the following these rules is mandatory for attendance, never before can you think of a more necessary skill to work on if your child literally can't even go to school without the skill.
Right. And that's so important that you stated that, Jen. Also, what we want you to do is make sure that you look at your state's IEP form, Individualized Education Program form. The functional skills can be captured in different sections of the form. Some states have a section that says activities of daily living. Others might have a section that actually says functional performance. But, you know, and we're going to talk about evaluating functional skills in a minute, but functional skills can also be behavioral, social, emotional. And so the functional skills may not live in just one place on the form. There could also be a section on the functional skills for health. So it doesn't really matter where they are on the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, but you need to work with your team to figure out where they best fit.
Well, and we always say, you know, repeatedly, we say, if a parent is going to be an effective advocate for their child, they really do need to familiarize themselves with their own state's IEP forms. I can think of 6 or 7 places in an IEP form in Connecticut where we are that functional performance may be embedded, including in the goals. You know, our goals have a little area at the top that in our form that checks off which area of discipline is being addressed. And so, you know, that's one area. Present levels of performance is another area. So we want to make sure that you just familiarize yourself with your form so that it's captured in the document.
Great. So moving on to, I just want to talk about the fact that on lifeskillslady.com, on the homepage, I actually have a quiz for anyone who comes to the site to sort of test what their life skills savvy score is, right? And I'm going to give you a little, well, it's going to be a spoiler alert here. One of the questions says, does the IDEA define functional skills? And so, Jen, can you go to the form and talk about that?
It does not.
It does not.
One of the many things that we grapple with in special education law is that there are many areas which have no definition in the law or have a very vague definition in the law. And functional skills, while we clearly are aware that they must be addressed, they're not really defined either. What we have in addition to the actual statute itself and the regulations that implement the statute is frequently there are commentaries to laws. Okay, I'm going to just put that as simply as I can. And that commentary is an opportunity for the agency which put forth the law, which in this case would be the Department of Education, to answer questions about the law that educators have, that people in the community have who are impacted by the law. In the commentary to the IDEA, they say specifically that they don't need to define it, but here's essentially what they say is functional skills. They're non-academic skills, and it's used in the context of routine activities of daily living. So activities of daily living, ADLs as some people refer to them, is really a better or a different way of saying functional skills. And so not to say that you could, I mean, I'm sure we could think of an example of an academic skill, which might also be a functional skill, like counting, budgeting, things of that nature, but really functional skills gets at those daily living skills.
And so the commentary also goes on to state that, let's see, what does it say here? I lost my place, sorry. That they are typically understood to be, oh, Jen, why can't I lost my place here?
Don't
oh,
know,
here it is.
Really?
Here, I got it. They're generally understood to be, include areas of social competence, communication, behavior, personal management, and self-determination.
Excellent.
So, you know, I think the other thing that sometimes people misunderstand in functional skills is you might think of activities of daily living and it's limited to things like hygiene, cooking, and laundry. And our functional skills are
So
all over the board and run the gamut. And, you know, so going back to your lifeskillslady.com, on the tab, there's a whole section on adaptive skills, and it explains the whole gamut of what functional skills are. So that's a good thing to check out as well. So now, Jen, let's talk about evaluating functional skills.
Okay, so the federal special education laws require that all students be evaluated by their school district in all suspected areas of disability, okay? And that's supposed to be comprehensive evaluation, and that's done at least every 3 years, or more frequently if the performance or behavior of the child requires it, or if there's a request to do testing earlier. So that testing should include an assessment of the student's functional skills. If we're really going to do a comprehensive evaluation, that's one of the skills that we want to look at. Now, for some students, they don't really have an area of deficit in the area of functional skills, but most do, and certainly most students who are on the autism spectrum do. And what it looks like, though, is going to be different for every child. Just as the IEP must be individualized, the evaluations should be custom made for that student's needs. And so one of the things that should be done is an assessment of functional skills. And I think on your site, Julie, you have some examples of those, right?
I have a whole page just devoted to some of the assessments that you can ask your team to perform in order to capture your child's present levels of functional skills across the whole domain of them. And I should just say, you know, in your comment about most children on the autism spectrum may have deficits in functional skills, you know, one of the other common misperceptions is with autism is that, you know, students who have a higher IQ may not have deficits in functional skills. And we just want to make sure that may be true. There may be lots of students on the autism spectrum who don't have great lagging functional skills. But I always say, I don't want to assume that.
Right.
And so evaluate them, and then you'll be certain you may have missed something. You know, sometimes, Jen, functional skills are masked by the support that parents and school teams give them.
Absolutely.
And it isn't until they've been exited from special education and they're adults that you say, oh my gosh, I never saw that coming. I didn't know that was an area that my child struggled with.
Right.
So that's why evaluating them is so very important.
True. It's true. And those skills just may look very different for one child than for another. And as you said, a skill may be demonstrated routinely in a small classroom with one-to-one support. That doesn't necessarily mean that skill is translating and being generalized to the larger community. So it would need to continue to be addressed.
And just like everyone else, students on the autism spectrum are all different.
Yep.
And they all have their own unique needs. And let's just make sure to assess the functional skills. So, okay, so Jen, to wrap this up, bring it home and talk to folks about how they can start this process with their IEP team, their individualized education program team.
Okay, so anytime you want to address an aspect of your child's IEP, you should be asking for an IEP team meeting. And certainly for the viral safety skills, this is something that if you haven't yet addressed in your child's IEP, you want to do immediately, because of the fact that if it's a contingency for school reopening that your child is able to demonstrate these skills, then you need to have a plan. So you want to ask for an IEP team meeting. You want to tell them why you want the meeting. It's not required that you explain why you want the meeting. You do have a right to an IEP meeting, but we think it's a good practice to let them know so that your team's informed and prepared to talk about it with you, and that the right people are participating. And you want to explain that as part of your child's IEP, you want to address these now necessary life skills of viral safety skills.
And Jen, what about parent training?
Right. So parent training and counseling is a related service under the IDEA. And essentially what that means is that if you require supports and instruction and training in order to support your child's IEP, whether that's to support it in the home, in the community, et cetera, that you're entitled to that, and you should ask for it as part of your child's IEP. So if you're going to be supporting, let's say, mask wearing outside of school, perhaps you need to be on the same page as the behaviorist in the school who's working with your child, using the same language, using the same procedure and protocol, maybe even using the same kind of mask, things of that nature, to make sure that the skill is being worked on outside of school as well. So if that's something you believe you require, asking for parent training is a good idea.
Yeah, and we love parent training.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Jen and I do as part of our yourspecialeducationrights.com. We're constantly talking about it.
Yeah.
But I think the last thing that I just want to talk about is the fact that your child's education may be a combination of in the school building, could be totally at home, so totally virtual, or it could be a hybrid.
Right.
Every state's going to be different. But when it comes to having these skills on the IEP, it's important that just because your child won't be in the building, you still want to reach out to your team and have them support you in teaching these skills and in all settings,
Sure.
right? And helping you understand what you have to do to support the teaching of these skills and the generalization of these skills.
Absolutely. It's going to be necessary for some period of time to participate in work opportunities. It's going to be necessary to participate in non-academics and community opportunities. It's become a life skill.
Right. So I hope that you have found this helpful. And Jen, thank you so much for joining me here on the Life Skills Lady.
Take care.